Okay, let's bring matters back here now and bring you some analysis and the implications of the country's political and economic landscape. We're joined by the University of South Africa, or Johannesburg's Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana, a Professor of Political Studies there. Prof, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. Can we begin with your analysis of a political party whose age throughout the continent of Africa is respected by fellow peers, and today they've lost their parliamentary majority, but here they are saying we are ready to share in the governance space. How significant is that, do you think?
It is quite a good sign for the... Good evening, nice to be here. It's been a while.
It's good to have you.
It's a good thing. You know, most parties don't leave out power, you know, so easy. So it is something to applaud, really. I'm very pleased with it.
Yeah. I want to then launch immediately to the discussion we have just heard around negotiations that are going to start unfolding. Let's start with the possible hurdles that could stand in the way of these negotiations, because in your recent articles, you sort of speak about the challenges that could be twofold. Relations, I would want to think these are perhaps person-to-person relations, and the likely demands from various political parties.
Well, you have three biggest parties, really, ANC, DA, and the EFF. So you have to look at, for instance, for the ANC, they must decide which of the two parties they take, either EFF or, for instance, at the DA. Two parties have different policies. So I think they will be looking for stability. Which party is likely to give you a bit of a stable government? Who do you get along with? You don't want parties that will make difficult demands, you know. And MK, for instance, is led by also a very difficult person, JZ. JZ has his own issues. He might want, for instance, not to go to prison, for his charges to be cancelled. And that's something that Cyril cannot provide.
Well, can I intervene there for a moment? Why would that be part of a negotiating issue? I would want to think that governance should be at the center of these negotiations, not personal matters.
Well, individual leaders also have their own personal issues. Certainly, JZ does. So he has been saying that there is some kind of a political solution that can be arrived at. And some of his people have also hinted to this, that they would want some clemency of sorts. So that's a party that rolls itself out. It can't deal with the ANC. And for me, I mean, you know, we are in a different moment, uncharted territory. We need to think a little bit differently. We need to look at the challenges that face us. 32% unemployment. We have a country that is coalescing around identities, voters. You have MK, for instance, getting more than close to 2 million, maybe.
Indeed.
Votes, and built around a personality cult. So people believe that this one person can change things for them, this messianic figure. They don't trust institutions, that these institutions can help me out, because these are kind of cold institutions. They don't care for me. So people are going for kinship ties. Someone that I am related to can do something for me. Same thing with the PA, colored folks. So the civic ties that are built around values and norms, around citizenship, are being kind of cancelled, weakening. So we need to make sure that we rebuild our institutions, make sure that people get what they need Because so long as the state doesn't provide, then you kind of create an opportunity for these cult figures. They promise all sorts of things. It's like church, people going to church drinking petrol. So these are kind of, people who promise things that are not possible, mainly because people have lost faith in the institutions. That's the major problem that we have. So when we're looking at a new government, we have to think who offers stability. Of course, people have their own issues, DA issues with land, for instance, and all that. But I think we are in a different situation where we can say there are certain challenges that we have. If we don't address those challenges, then they provide fertile ground for populism and demagogues.
Yeah.
So we run the risk of unraveling whatever we have achieved so far. So even if the DA is opposed to those things, but I think they might be open to considering an arrangement that allows the country to save its own future. So that's really, for me, one of the key issues we should think about.
Yeah. Professor Ndletyana, I want to talk in a moment about the National Assembly, Parliament, because that's such an important institution. But before that, how important is the composition of negotiating teams going to be? This afternoon, the Democratic Alliance leader announcing the team that is going to be leading the DA's negotiations. The ANC, Fikile Mbalula, saying that is going to be, in the main, spearheaded by him, but Gwede Mantashe is quoted in the Sunday Times as saying that he has been pointed to as the person that will go and talk to the former president, Jacob Zuma. The personalities that are going to drive these negotiations, is that important?
It is important. You need a friendly person, also a senior person, because you are trying to strike a new deal. So people have to kind of get along, be nice to each other. You can't send bulldogs who will go in and try to bully everybody else, because that won't lead anywhere. So senior people, friendly folks, people who can talk articulately with a mandate as well. You don't want too junior people. They will be toing and froing for the whole day.
Yeah.
So this should be someone who's there, who has the mandate to take a decision on the spot when it is necessary.
Let's then talk about the National Assembly, Parliament. Lindiwe Mazibuko writes very interestingly in the Sunday Times today that after decades of neglect, Parliament will finally take its place at the center of governance and accountability. How much of a center is Parliament going to be now, given what has happened? Because this country has always been known as a multi-party democracy. Do you think that that house now will become central as part of this democracy?
Of course, I think you have more diverse voices. You have Songezo Zibi, you have Musi is back, you have many other people that are there. And it's people will have to pit their wits against each other. And the good thing about new people is that they come in and ask new questions. Why are these things done this way? And so you have fresh ideas. You'll have interesting debates. But I'm also worried about the public service, Toli, with this new government coming in. Obviously, you are going to have new ministers. You're going to have, new ministers, possibly new president. So then the question is, are these DGs going to be kicked out? Is their job security? Political advisors might be kicked out. So there is a lot of anxiety within government about what is likely to happen when a new guy comes in. We need to handle this transition in a clear and smart way. and not be triumphalist. We are in now. We are going to kick out all the old guys. And of course, it will be interesting to see how they vote for the speaker and for the president himself or herself. But we are looking at potentially the most exciting parliament, perhaps since the first parliament.
Yeah.
New ideas, new thinking. For me, that's key. But then again, you also have a question in the ANC about whether or not Cyril will stay the cause. We know Paul wants the job. Cyril never wanted Paul to be his deputy. And Cyril has always been seen as an asset. He will bring in the votes. Certainly after JZ, he did stem the damage by bringing the ANC down to 57 when it could have been worse. But now, today, we have dropped, the ANC has dropped from 57 to 40.
Yeah.
17% percentage drop. So there is a legitimate question to be asked. Sir, what happens now? Because obviously you are no longer the asset that we thought you would be. So there is that question, especially from those who are impatient to take the top spot. But at the same time, Paul is also not a universal choice. He has all sorts of issues that he might have to deal with. So the power struggle in the ANC, I'm afraid, is not done yet. And for me, that's the one.
Can I squeeze in something there whilst you're on the question of the president? We know now, thanks to Fikile Mbalula letting it slip at some point during the campaign, that the President Cyril Ramaphosa, on the back of the Phala scandal, he had to be begged to stay. Might he pull a curveball on them and decide that he's resigning?
Well, he can't decide all alone because he kind of leads a group of people whose livelihoods, by the way, depend on him. But he's not the kind of a person who likes fighting his own battles. I think at the slightest scare, he withdraws. It has taken people like Gwede, for instance, to say, you can't just leave, right? So you also have Thabo in the mix, Thabo Mbeki. He's been central in their campaign, and so he might have a lot of say in who becomes president. So for me, most people also, because you are going through this dramatic change, you don't want too drastic a change. So I think most people will lean on Cyril to stay the course, assuming others push him out and perhaps he wants to move. Others will say, no, we still have to have a familiar face steering the ship. Perhaps your leaving can be considered later on, but for now, stay the course. But it's uncertain, Polly. It's uncertain.
I want to then, as we conclude this conversation, bring it back to the MK party. I was just looking at the National Assembly allocation seats. They have got 58 seats. There is that particular graphic. 58 seats. In fact, they are now party number 3. They're the third biggest party in Parliament. You have written an article saying that you thought the MK party would be exceedingly content with its performance, but that's not the case. Is this typical behavior of political parties during an election, or is that something specific about the MK party, about why it is that it is rejecting this outcome?
Well, they said they would get a 2/3 majority, which they didn't get. So they're trying to fabricate an excuse or an explanation as to why they didn't get it. the mere existence of this party, the fact that they have gotten this much support is a sad indication or indictment about our own country. Because this is purely based on ethnicity. I've heard all the protestations. I mean, I've been following this thing for a while now. JZ's candidacy is built on ethnicity. And it started way back at Polokwane, for instance. You had folks from KZN singing Indlamu at Polokwane, embarrassing KZN leaders. They had to be told, right? Mm-hmm. His campaign, 100% Zulu boy, and the entire KZN leaders, for instance, would go around supporting JZ, saying it's now time to elect a Zulu person. And that's what they did with the ANC. And they continued to do that. When in 2009, when everybody else was saying JZ is bad news, KZN voted for JZ in huge numbers because he is one of their own. Right? Even today, he came to Orlando and spoke entirely in Zulu, right in the middle of Orlando, here in Soweto, because he was addressing his own fellow Zulu speakers, folks who used to live in the hostels here.
Professor Ndletyana,
yes.
Let me ask this. Is this not dangerous, though? Should we not be addressing this as a country to say, this is wrong? Because if we allow it, as you put it, and we commentate about it, it's not going to stand us in good stead, because we know what ethnic violence does. We only have to look at examples, not only ourselves, pre-1994, but you have to look at Kenya, which has given us recent examples of what post-election violence based on ethnicity does.
It is a bad thing, but we must make sure that our institutions function optimally. People must not lose faith in the government to a point where they trust individuals who are like them. Umzulu wageti, therefore he will care for us. No, no, no. Institutions must work properly. If they do that, then you kind of reduce the appeal of these messianic figures. But we must continue to talk about it. Refuse to be shut down by these demagogues. They want us to believe that what we are seeing is not real. It is real. JZ is a tribalist. His entire support is built on ethnicity. Ethnic support, vote for someone similar to you. They went to Nazareth, for instance, KZN leadership. They wouldn't vote for anyone other than a Zulu person, ANC people. So the ANC, today they're turning around, pretending to be surprised. They created this monstrosity, including Okwete at Polokwane, when people were singing Zulu warrior songs at a national ANC conference. They supported him. They supported him throughout. So it's a monstrosity, unfortunately, that is coming to bite us, to bite all of us. But you are correct. We must talk about it. We must implement measures that undermine its appeal.
All right.
But it is certainly a danger.
Final question, Professor Ndletyana.
Yep.
And we've got to talk about the rejection of this election by a number of political parties, and among them, the MK party. Where to now, or what do you think should be done? Because some political observers have said this happens all the time after an election, but perhaps the difference here is that you have a party that has garnered a lot of support and has indeed done exceedingly well in this election. Yes, they're not in the majority, but they have done exceedingly well. And on top of it, they are led by a person who was recently a former head of state. Is there reason to worry when they are saying that they are demanding a recount? If not a recount, a revote. If that doesn't work, therefore there might be trouble. Do not stir trouble, as the former president put it late yesterday.
There are mistakes that will be made, but they've been corrected. Some of these IC staff are new, they get confused sometimes, but everybody's there, they can pick up all these mistakes. So the objections, the complaint at times are kind of fabricated. Fabricated because people want to increase their numbers through intimidation, threatening violence. The IC is the only body, we're a country of rules. We have a constitution. We have rules, we have all sorts of things that guide us on what to do on each and every aspect of our public life. And part of this includes IEC looking at these complaints and saying, well, there's nothing here. If the IEC says there's nothing here, then that goes, and the IEC must declare the elections. So whoever doesn't accept it, then it is his business, really, because the rules are there. They've been shown that there's nothing here. And so you would expect that sound-minded people would accept this. Of course, they may threaten all sorts of things. I mean, people do that because for some reason convince themselves that they are strong. But we're a country of laws. We do have legitimate law enforcement agencies. They must deal with this thing. If, for instance, there's some violence that comes up, there's this and that, we can't be intimidated into agreeing to things that are false. We're a country of laws, and the laws must be enforced.
Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana, thank you very much for your time, political sciences professor at the University of Johannesburg.